of the year. So we meet with a lot of agents this time of year, and they're like, gosh, I had a goal to sell 40 homes this year, and they're thinking they need to have 10 closed, and they only have 4 closed. I'm really behind. Well, what is 15% of 40? All right, they're probably 6, right? So you're a little bit behind, but you're actually not as far behind as you thought. So 15% of your transactions should close in Q1, 25% should happen in Q2, and if you look at it, 60% of your business actually closes in the last half of the year. So even when you get into the summer months, I'll meet with agents when we do kind of an updated business plan, and we'll look at where they're at year to date, what their goal was, and as long as you're 40% of the way there by July, you're on track to hit your goal. So a lot of agents we meet with, they say, gosh, I'm so far behind. Well, not really. You only need 15% in the first quarter in order to hit your goal. And then some people say, well, gosh, I did 25% of my goal in Q1. Well, then we either need to increase your goal, or you get to take some time off, or you get to take a few vacations. So make sure you always keep that in mind, especially when you're doing your business planning. I wrote down, how are you doing with own the morning and win the day? Something we talked about at the beginning of the year a lot, something we talked about back at the summit, was if you own the morning, you dominate the morning, the rest of the day will fall into place. Everything else just happens to fall into place. So I want you to think about, how am I doing with owning the morning and winning the day? I wrote down Monday, which is April the 1st, is your chance to hit the reset button. Come Monday, first quarter's behind us, it's the second quarter. So we go back and look at the schedule, especially the morning schedule. You guys have probably heard me share this story before. Up until this year, for the last 10 years, all of the agents that we've worked with at JGA, I've always asked them to put together a full day schedule, right? I want to know essentially, I want to help you with what you do from the time you get up until the end of the day. And so what we changed this year, and this is really the first time I did this, is I don't care what happens after lunchtime anymore. I don't need to know how many appointments you're going on or what admin you're doing. What I am curious to is, what are you doing from the hours of 9 and noon, 8 and noon, 7 and noon? Because if you just figure that piece out and just focus on that piece, everything else will fall into place. So how are you doing on owning the morning, winning the day? So I wrote down, also this time of year especially, when I talk about it staying a little bit lighter out as the days go on, this is when I would get into the tendency of doing a little bit later prospecting. So if I didn't have an appointment to go on, because I should be on an appointment at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, I would stay back and do at least 30 or 60 minutes of lead generation in the evening while it's still light out. People are more likely to talk business. I know this sounds silly. People are more likely to talk business and have a conversation with you when it's light out versus when it's dark out. So this is the time that you could make calls up till 7, 8 p.m. because it's legal to do so, A, and B, because it's light out. So think about your call schedule. Again, if I didn't have an appointment, that was kind of like my penalty, right? Prospecting was my penalty in the evening. What if you just added 2 60-minute sessions a week? Right, think about it. What would 2 60-minute sessions a week do for your business? Even just one. If you decided instead of, not going to go out to dinner, or not going to go get drinks, or not going to go do this, just one particular evening per week for 60 minutes, you're going to generate at least 1 lead. What does 1 lead times 40 weeks do for you? 40 more leads turns into probably 20 appointments, which turns into another 7, 8, 9 closings. So think about if you just added 1 60-minute prospecting session per week. I wrote down, I would suggest after dinner, but before bedtime, for those of you that like the phones. Never interrupt dinner. Dinner is not the best time to call. After dinner, but before bedtime, especially this time of year. So speaking on that, the last question I wrote down is, how does your schedule match your business plan? Right? Because the schedule is designed to help us close X amount of transactions. And if we're on track, maybe we don't have to change anything with the schedule. But if we're not on track, how does your schedule match your business plan? Which takes us to point number 2, which is, I wrote down number 2, make second quarter adjustments to your business plan. Make second quarter adjustments to your business plan. And quite frankly, what I know some of the best agents do around the country is they have a yearly business plan, but they actually have 4 separate business plans throughout the year. So they go back and they either A, go back and modify their current plan, or B, they literally have a plan just for the second quarter. I wrote down the 2 areas to pay attention to when you're updating your plan or rewriting your plan is the plan of action and the new daily schedule, which we just spoke about. Well, what do I do with my plan of action? Well, your plan of action is everything that you said you were going to do in order to hit your goal this year, all right? So most of you guys have put together an awesome business plan. So now you go back and say, okay, these are the 7 or 8, 9, 10 things that I committed to doing this year. Honestly, which ones have I done? Which ones have I ignored? Which ones will I probably never do? This is your opportunity to go back and highlight some things, cross things out, go back and add to it. If you haven't looked at your business plan since the start of the year, this is the time to do so. And the page I would open it up to, if you ignored everything else in the plan, the page I would open it up to is the plan of action. Because those are the action items that you need to take in order to hit your goals, right? So I wrote down, can we get rid of a few things? Is there room to add an activity? Also, what about that vision board? What have you crossed off? What have you added to it? What have you subtracted to it? Right? You all put together vision boards, or should have put together vision boards to start the year. Are there things you've already accomplished? What things have you accomplished that you can rip off or put a big red X on? Or what are some things that you've thought of because the year's going so well that you want to add to that board? You know, and I need more motivation to keep this up the rest of the year. Another thing I would look at when you're looking at revisiting your plan, and this is actually a directive from Gary Keller, how can I add value to my database? Think about if you put your plan together and you didn't ask yourself this question, or if you did, let's go back and revisit it. How can I add value to my database? Which we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Or another question, how can I add value as a realtor? Right? One thing we're doing at JGA is we're doing a series called Property Mastery, where we're actually taking the time to learn about real estate. Now, I'm not talking about price per square foot and listings and sales. I'm talking about types of roofs, types of furnaces, types of foundations, so that we can add value to the customer when we're on appointments. So what could you do to add value either A, to the client, okay, I gave the example of Property Mastery, or B, to your database, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Number 3, I want you to go back and take a look at all of your fall and winter leads. I want you to go back and take a look at all your fall and winter leads. Think about how many people you spoke to that use the excuse of the holidays or winter or waiting until after the first of the year or waiting until spring as an example to get you to essentially leave them alone, right? Nope, we're going to be waiting until after the holidays. Nope, we're going to be waiting until after spring. We had a prospecting day on last Friday, or the Friday before St. Patrick's Day, and I had asked our staff to put together, which I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. I said, I want to know every single listing presentation I went on and every single buyer consultation I had in 2018. And I want that list. And of course, we had to scrub and make sure they, took out the properties that had sold. Obviously, I don't get every single listing appointment I go on, so there's other ones that were listed with somebody else and sold, or listed with somebody else and expired, or didn't do anything at all. Actually, that's what we found. Almost 50% of this list, by the way, hadn't even listed or bought or sold a home. So I went through that list. This was, a couple Fridays ago, and that was for my prospecting day. That was the list I worked. Every single, if you think about where are you going to have the highest conversion? Most likely with somebody you've already met, right? So if I'm thinking about doing lead follow-up and I want to do something different, I want to do something special, that alone, by the way, with it, that prospecting day, I was kind of embarrassed because, the rest of the company was setting like 2, 3, 4 appointments per person, and I had only set 1. So, it was kind of like, what the heck? This wasn't maybe that great of an idea. But that next Saturday, by noon on Saturday morning, I had 2 more appointments. So I had 2 more people call back and say, got your message yesterday. Funny you should call. We're actually thinking about getting our home on the market this spring. So I got 3 great leads or great appointments from that activity. Going back to every single person I met with in 2018 and seeing what their plans are. It wasn't really they were very easy calls. Hey, thanks for taking the time to meet with me last spring or last summer or in the fall. Obviously, with the weather, things are improving. Have you given any thought about buying, or have you given any thought about selling? Oh yeah, funny you should call, right? So I had 3 out of that day that were definitely, that turned into appointments. So think about setting time aside for that. I wrote down, think of open houses you had, people you added into your CRM, appointments that you went on, here's another one, appointments that you pre-qualified out because they weren't ready or motivated right this second. Think about how many appointments that you may have had an opportunity to go on or set that you pre-qualified out because they weren't ready at the time. Well, wait a minute. If I pre-qualified them out, why would I go, there's a reason why I decided not to go on that appointment. Why would I go now? Well, the reason why you would go now is the same reason why when an agent asks me, they're not willing to take any of my advice on reducing the home, what do we do? Do we fire them or just keep it on the market? No, you keep it on the market until the contract expires. Well, why would I do that? Well, because a consumer's motivation changes. We've all had, or should have had, if we're taking enough listings, a situation where we had a seller, it was sitting, it wasn't going anywhere, they weren't taking your advice. All of a sudden you get 2-3 showings out of nowhere and it sells, right? Or all of a sudden they call you and say, hey, this situation happened, what is it going to take? When you just had a conversation with them 2 weeks prior, they said, no way, no how are we adjusting our price. So think about appointments that you didn't go on, but good conversations that you had, or appointments that you set that didn't make sense for you to go on at the time, and follow up with those. Why? Because their motivation changes. I wrote down also, what about your fall-winter listings? Wouldn't it be a great opportunity? I know one thing that we do is we use this opportunity to go out and get new photos of our listings. And oh, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this would be a great time, since we're getting a new exterior photo, right? We don't have to go in and take new interiors. Since we're getting a new exterior photo, why don't we relist the property as new, or use this as an opportunity to help your listing appear more attractive by adjusting the price? I mean, why would you put the energy and time, or maybe pay a photographer, or you drive out there and take a photo yourself, if you're at least not going to get a price reduction? So I tied the two together. Hey, your front photo's still got a little bit of snow in it. It's kind of getting stale. We're going to do this. I'm going to come out and grab a new photo of your home, or I'm going to send out a photographer to take a new picture, and we're going to relist it as a new listing at a new price. And here's the price I recommend. And now all of a sudden, you've heard us say this before, a price reduction is just like a new listing. So this is an opportunity essentially for you to take a couple of your stale listings and make them look fresh again, get showings, and hopefully sell. Next, I wrote down number 4. Let's take a look at your buyer leads. Let's take a look at your buyer leads for the spring into spring. I wrote down, every study under the sun says that buyers start inquiring weeks or even months in advance. So why wouldn't we go back to every lead you received in 2018 and check in on them? Think about the psyche of the consumer, right? They start doing some perusing on Realtor.com or on Zillow. Then maybe they ask a couple questions and they're dark for a month or two. We just had one of our agents, I just saw it a couple minutes ago in our intercompany chat thing, talk about how a lead that she received from last summer just went out and made an offer on a property yesterday for $400,000. So why is it possible that we received a lead last summer and it just sold now? Because they inquire sometimes 3-6 months in advance before they're actually ready. So I know when we do prospecting days, that's something I'm encouraging our group to go back and look at those particular leads. Send a mass text, send an email, whatever system you do, or do it manually. I wrote down the best agents in our system this spring will be working with both buyers and sellers. However, they don't show homes. They use showing agents. So depending on where you're at in your business, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to use a showing agent right now, or even to have a showing agent. But you could probably find an agent in the office who isn't so busy right this moment and could use an extra few bucks that you could refer buyers to and have them show homes for you. The most profitable agents and the most productive agents don't show homes. They utilize showing agents. So think about your business model this coming spring when it comes time to show homes. What could you be doing with that extra time? Which goes back to point number 1, creating a new schedule. Well, I'm not showing homes anymore, so I have time to what? Generate more opportunities. I also wrote down, think of creative ways to get them to respond to you, right? So if you're doing text messaging or if you're doing a mass email, think of creative ways that you can get them to respond to you. And it doesn't just have to be, I mean, some of it's basic. Hey, you were looking at homes in Plymouth between 300,000 and 400,000. Is that still your price range, right? It can be something simple like that. You can use outside sources as well. We just did one with Flagstar Bank. They had an awesome loan program, which I'm sure you guys have heard of, the zero down program. We sent out, I don't know, how many did we send out?
Any emails?
Yeah.
There was like 3,000 we sent out.
We sent out 3,000 emails and got what, probably over 100 responses?
Mm-hmm.
Over 100 responses to people saying, yes, tell me more, right? We kept Chris and his gang busy for the whole week because these people were like, yeah, I want to know about this program. I didn't think we'd get that kind of response. I've never been a big believer in the mass email or the mass text approach, but it worked. So it doesn't always have to be about one particular property or about real estate in general. You can use another source. In this particular case, we used a loan program and got responses. Why did they respond? Probably because it's something different than what most realtors are doing. Just something to think about. Number 5, I wrote down, spring into spring. Host a spring client event. Host a spring client event. This goes back to the question of, how are you adding value to your database? Host a spring client event. I wrote down the whole goal of this is to be top of mind when they are the most involved in conversations with people who are thinking about buying or selling. You want to be top of mind this time of year, especially in a seasonal market, it's the best time to do it. I was teaching a class in Kalamazoo last week or 2 weeks ago, and I used the example of, we do a big Tigers opening day party, and we have now for 4 or 5 years. And the timing is perfect because it's always usually early April, right around the time when people are thinking about buying or selling, and that works well for us. Well, when I was teaching the class out there, they said, well, not a lot of Kalamazoo people are big Tigers fans because it's a 2-hour drive. So what could we do? I said, well, don't you guys have Oberon Day? Right? I mean, that's like a big deal in Kalamazoo. And they were like, oh my gosh, I'm taking that one. I'm going to do that one. Right? Oberon Day is like, what, next week? Everybody know?
Wasn't it like 2 days ago?
2 days ago, whatever. Okay, so maybe for next year they can do it. Oberon Day, right? Blue moon, yeah, Oberon. It's a big deal out there. Literally, that town shuts down after lunchtime. I mean, people go to work, just like we shut down on opening day, they go to work and they work a half day, and at lunch, it's a liquid lunch from there on out, and they're drinking Oberon all day. Well, what I suggested is, okay, where's the Oberon, where do they serve Oberon? Find a park or something near there, put up a big tent where people are going to be driving by, and provide Oberon to everybody, to your entire client database. It's a big deal out there. So it doesn't have to be, I use it as an example because it doesn't have to be like something big and extravagant, right? It can be something that happens in the community, right? They used to have, I saw, on Facebook some people putting on a, Easter egg hunt, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be around a sports or a big event, but it should be in the spring. Somebody asked a question in the class I was teaching yesterday, and this came up when I was talking about client events. They said, what are you doing? You're sharing with us 7 things to do in the spring. They asked the question, what are you not doing this spring that you did last spring, and why did you change that? I thought that was a pretty good question. So what did I do last spring that I'm not doing this spring, and why? Fair. And the way I answered it was, we significantly cut back our advertising budget for this spring, so that way we can put it into client events and add more value to our database. Well, why is that? Well, because the ROI on certain things that we do, for instance, one that I shared was we're not doing any TV advertising in Detroit this spring. Well, why aren't you doing that? Because the ROI on that is not going to be the same as the ROI on adding value to our database and doing client events. So if that gives you any indication how passionate I am right now about adding value to the database, and we have Gary Keller to thank for that. By the way, holding an event gives you a reason to mail, email, send a voice broadcast, right? It gives you another opportunity to reach out. It's a reason. It's not like you're asking or soliciting for business. You're inviting them to something. And oh, by the way, once they're there, the understanding is, because when we send out stuff via email and mail to our database, we say, as a thank you for your past business and or referrals, continued referrals, we're inviting you to this. Well, even if they're not sending us referrals Or even if they're not past clients, we're still saying that. Why are we saying that? Because we're trying to tie the two together. So if you show up to our opening day event, let's just say, understand that everyone else that's there is sending us business. And hopefully they will start to follow suit, especially if they want to be invited next year. So think about the language you use. Thank you for being a great past client and for continuing to send us referrals. As a thank you, we'd like to invite you to blah, 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 blah. So whether they've sent you business or not, we use that language because then they're more likely to send you business as a, oh gosh, if I'm gonna keep getting invited back to this, I have to repay the favor. All these people are sending business, I need to send business. So think about your language when you're putting together either a blast. I mean, we did a voice broadcast and got, I don't know, probably a dozen responses of people who signed up for the event just by doing a voice broadcast and inviting them to that. If you're not going to do something around, I wrote down, why couldn't it be something charitable? Why can't you get people involved in something charitable? People love to help out and get involved in that stuff. You know, I remember a couple years ago we posted something about Life Remodel. Before we had Glover's Heroes, we posted, you know, hey, you know, the whole team's going down for this Life Remodel to help clean up blight in the city. Well, I actually had some friends and family and some past clients reach out and say, hey, I saw, you know, your post of you guys going down there, because it was like a 2-day thing or whatever. I posted it maybe the day before. Do you mind if we join you down there to help out? I've got the day off tomorrow. Can we come help too? Right? So think about how you could align yourself with some sort of charitable event. I mean, I just used Life Remodeled as an example. That's a great organization. You could send out invites. You know, this happens every summer. You could send out invites to your database, make phone calls to your database, and tell them to meet you here or meet you in a parking lot somewhere. They all leave their cars there. You're gonna have to pay for a charter bus, so it's gonna be a little expensive, but I mean, we're not talking thousands of dollars. Or you just have them meet you at the site and you have a tent set up, you know, with some propaganda or whatever there, but ultimately you're there to help out and you're there to spend time with your clients. You're there to add value to the database. Some things to think about. Next, I wrote down number 6. Go make a visit. Go make a visit. 7 things to do this spring. Number 6 is go make a visit or go pay a visit. What do I mean by that? Well, right now, and usually every spring, in this particular spring, we're definitely taking advantage of this beautiful weather that we've had, so we're starting a little early. We're actually going around and visiting the best for sale by owners and expireds as they come off the market each day. Instead of just calling and following up, we're going to their door. We're dropping off something of value. Well, what are you dropping off? Well, think about it. Just like you would take, whatever you would take on a listing presentation is what you should drop off to them. So I wrote down a copy of your resume, copy of your plan of action, copy of your reviews. You know, online reviews are obviously huge right now. A cover letter, why you're dropping it off to them. Cover letter, plan of action, resume, reviews, and a nice folder. And I can tell you right now from experience, and you know, this is probably one of the bigger ways that I built the business early on, not many agents go visit at the door. Yeah, they might be getting bombarded with 10, 12, 15, 20 calls a day, but maybe 1 or 2 are actually going to their house. And I'm not saying you have to drive all over Timbuktu, but you could identify probably 2 or 3 a day. Right now, I was just having a conversation with a couple of our ISAs. We are seeing for sale by owners opportunities increase like crazy right now. Why is that? It's spring, the weather's nice. And the comment I made was shift your focus to for sale by owners right now and not so much on expireds. Well, why wouldn't there be a lot of expireds right now? Well, think of it. Every year this happens, by the way. If most listing agreements are 90 days or 120 days, when would they have to have listed in order to expire right now? December, November, the holidays, January. So when people say, I don't get it, why are the expires really low at, this time of year? That's why, because not many listings came on the market December, what's the date today, 27th, right? So December 27th to March 27th, what is that? Is that 3 months? Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go. So there probably wasn't a lot of expireds today because that means they would have had to list on December 27th. Mm-hmm. And how many people were listing 2 days after the holiday? So the focus should shift, number 1, to going and seeing them at their door and leaving something of value. And also, if you're focusing on expireds this time of year, I would shift that focus to for sale by owners because there's going to be a lot more opportunities there.
It was 46 maybe, and that was FSBO and the expires.
46 opportunities just today. Yep. Yep. I wrote down, best time to go see people, by the way, is between the hours of 3 and 5. Best time to go see people is between the hours of 3 and 5. If you show up at their door, now, granted, this time of year, as it gets lighter out, it's fine. You just don't want to interrupt dinner. Meaning, if you were going to show up at 7 or 7:30, that's probably okay. I'd rather you be there between 3 and 5. I was trying to catch at least the first spouse to be home, right? And that was usually 3:30, 4, 4:30. Before dinner was on, before they got involved in all that. 3 to 5, that was my zone. And by the way, that was my penalty to myself. If I didn't have an appointment set for that day to go on, well, hey, I'm suited up. I suited up every day, no matter what. I'm suited up anyways. I might as well go see someone face to face, since I'm not getting to go on an appointment. And if I didn't have any good expireds or for sale by owners I would want to go visit, I would do a just listed, just sold flyer. Right? I'd pick a listing that just came on the market or just sold. Even if it wasn't one of mine, I wouldn't try to claim it as mine. I would make sure they knew, I'm just stopping by to give you information on what's going on in the neighborhood. Your neighbors just listed their home for sale on 123 Banana Street. And we know when one home lists, usually 2 or more go up right away, so I was wondering, when do you plan on moving? The goal was just, I want to get in front of someone every single day. So I had to think of a reason to do that. And it's either visiting it for sale by owner, visiting expired, or going and doing, and I wouldn't do like 100 flyers. I would do 10 doors to the left, 10 doors to the right, maybe 10, 20 doors across the street. And by the way, in those 40 doors, I'd probably talk to about a third of the people would answer. So I'd have 12 to 15 face-to-face contacts. I'd almost always get 1 or 2 good either opportunities or reasons to add them to my database. Because I met them face-to-face. So if I stay in front of them, they're going to remember me once they get something from me. So if it's not a for sale by owner, it's not an expired, think about doing a just listed, just sold at the door. Well, what do I have in the flyer? Well, it can be basic. It can be, hey, here's the listing that just came on the market or the listing that just sold. And on the back, it can have, oh, by the way, here's everything else that's going on in the neighborhood. I mean, again, if we're supposed to be on an appointment every day, why wouldn't we? Finally, number 7. Ways to spring into spring. I want you to revise your social media plan. Revise your social media plan. And I'll share with you what I mean by that. So I want you to think about, what do your spring ads look like? Do you already have them planned out? I know for us, we use a social media calendar. And it's not like it's this fancy system. I mean, literally, it's just a calendar. And then we just write the dates that posts are going to go up. And we look at, by the way, you'll always come up with more creative content if you plan it in advance versus doing what most agents do, and they just do it as they think of it. So when you look at the calendar, you can make sure you don't miss any holidays. You can make sure you don't miss clocks being changed back, all the stuff that happens during any month. And you can have them all planned out and scheduled in advance. Now, some people do this instead of monthly, they do this weekly, which is fine. Best day to do that would probably be on a Sunday before you're getting ready for the week. If you don't want to plan them out in a month in advance, at least plan them a week in advance. So on Sunday, you can go in and say, yep, this is going to post Monday, this is going to post Wednesday, this is going to post Friday. A lot of people ask, what design software do we use for our stuff? It's nothing fancy. We use Canva. All right, there's free versions available, or there's a paid version, which is still not that expensive. It's probably 12, 20 bucks, 15 bucks, something like that. Canva, that's C-A-N-V-A. And quite frankly, you can go into a lot of the Facebook groups, like Lab Code Agents or whatever, and just ask, hey, what are some of the April posts you guys are doing? And people will just start, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm doing this. You can get some ideas right from that. If you haven't joined the Glover U Inner Circle, I would encourage you to do that. There's a lot of good dialogue and content going back and forth in there. On Facebook, if you just search Glover U Inner Circle, ask to join, boom, you'll get plopped right in there. That's for you to ask questions like that. Social media, okay? What about an open house promotion? Do you know what days this month you're holding open houses and how you're going to promote them? See, if you block off, let's say 2 Sundays this month, then you're going to be more likely to force yourself to go find a listing to hold open, right? I would sometimes use this as my reason for door knocking. Say, hey, I'm in the neighborhood because I plan on holding a home open this month in your neighborhood, and I was wondering, when do you plan on moving? Would you be interested in having me hold your home open for sale? I would actually use that as a reason during my door knocking. Right, so I'd identify 1 or 2 days a month, because I didn't like to do open houses every single weekend, but I'd identify 1 or 2 days a month where I'd have an open house, and I would just put it on the schedule. My goal for that month or that week or the days leading up to it would be to find a listing to hold open. And sometimes, especially early on in my career, it was just holding somebody else's listing open, and that's fine too. What else could go on the social media calendar? You could do Kelly snapshots. All right, that could be a post. I know we've utilized that. You could promote a charitable foundation or an event like Red Day, your client event, obviously. I wrote down, don't be too shy to ask for help. You know, the old-fashioned, which this was a pretty common script back in the day, which can be turned into a social media post. I have a goal to help 10 families in the next 90 days, or I have a goal to help 5 families this spring buy or sell a home here in Southeast Michigan. So I was wondering, who do you know that could use my help? People like to help people, especially if it helps, you know, if you're in an office, I tell our agents all the time, even if you're in a contest, go ahead and brag about being in a contest and that you're trying to win a contest. You'd be amazed at how many people want to see you win a contest. I wrote down, don't have as many listings as you'd like right now, but you'd like to share some to get some activity going. You can ask any agent at any time to share their listing. Most agents are going to tell you, go for it. I mean, we get asked all the time, hey, I saw you got this new listing on, you know, Apple Street. Do you mind if I share it? Do it. You don't necessarily need to claim that it's your listing. You're just promoting listings. What does that do? It shows the public that you're busy, which is what they want to see. I wrote down, going back to client events for a second, why not support, get involved, or piggyback off something that is big in the spring market? Right? When you think of your social media, how can you tie those two together? I'll give you an example, okay? They do music in the park here in downtown Plymouth. You better believe we do a post about music in the park in downtown Plymouth and we boost it to all of Plymouth. Right? It doesn't always have to be real estate related. In fact, sometimes it's actually better if it's not. Because why? Because you're adding value. Right? So by doing a post of us showing here are all the concert series in the park, oh, by the way, you know, we'll be there too, come see us. We're giving them value. We're showing them what's going on in the park this summer. We're not asking who do you know that needs to buy or sell in every single post. In fact, in most posts, we're not asking that. Right? We follow a simple rule. We give 2/3 of our posts are content related, and 1/3 is asking for business. Very simple formula. 2/3 are content related, giving value. 1/3 is asking for business. Now, sometimes we'll do 4 or 5 in a row that are just value add and then 1, right? But for the most part, you don't want to be seen as asking for business more than value you're providing. Couple other things. This is a bonus one, or it's not number 8, but you want to make sure that when you're planning your spring and this coming summer, you want to block off the dates of 7/22 to 7/24 for the Live Unreal Retreat. But I am bringing that up now because there is a spring early bird price. And so you save $50 if you register before, I think it's April 15th. Yes, April 15th. So it's going to be $299 or $249. The ticket price is $199 as long as you register before April the 15th. LiveUnrealRetreat.com is the website for that. All of our speakers are up there. You know what's really cool? I just got off the phone. I haven't even told you this yet. One of our speakers and people that I'm interviewing, a lot of you may not know the name, especially if you haven't been in the industry for a while, Kathy Schweitzer. So Kathy Schweitzer was the first person who hired me to say, you know what, we're going to give you a shot at managing an office kid when I was 19, 20 years old. And they ran a very successful Coldwell Banker firm here in Metro Detroit. They had 16 offices, 600 agents, and she's now running a firm in Boston. But it's going to be super cool because we're going to do an interview one-on-one on stage about what we look, how I failed and what I did wrong and what I need to improve on. And she's probably going to, make me embarrass me, whatever. But it's going to be a very cool conversation to have, with someone that's been a mentor for me. to meet for a long time. But anyways, she's not on the website yet. But if you go to liveunrealretreat.com, you'll see all the people that are joining us. Questions on the 7 that we talked about today? Yes?
As far as social media goes, do you think there's certain stuff we should engage in not talking about to be professional?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I see
Yeah.
a lot of other brokers talking about stuff that they probably shouldn't be talking
Yeah,
about.
no, you want to try to remain as neutral as possible, right? You don't want to get into politics. The question was, for those that are in the front, the question was, what do you talk about or not talk about on social media? You don't want to get too deep into, people are on this big kick of being authentic and raw on there. Be mindful that your clients are watching that stuff. And so, yeah, I would be always mindful of that. But your question did bring up another point. There's 2 types of social media in terms of like Facebook. I mean, there's Twitter and there's Instagram and these other ones, but let's just talk Facebook for a second. Every one of you should set a goal to probably double or triple the amount of friends that you have on Facebook, because that is free exposure, all right? So Facebook allows you to have 5,000 friends. Whether you have 500 or 1,000, whatever, you could get to 5,000 faster than you think. It's just gonna require 10, 15 minutes a day. And what that is essentially going through, it gives you suggested friends. Going through the suggested friends just once, and make it like the last thing you do before you go to bed, or maybe the first thing before you get out of bed. Go through the suggested friends and make it a point to click on 5 or 6 of them. Avoid adding a bunch of realtors, okay, because a lot of them are going to be realtors, and add the people that are suggesting you add. Why is that? Because it's suggesting people that are connected to other friends of yours already, right? So if you're wondering why these suggested friends are always showing up, it's because you already have a connection, you already have a mutual friend. All right, now for obviously a lot of them will be real estate agents, because let's face it, we're friends with real estate agents on Facebook. So you'll have to be, just click on their face, and it'll show you their job title or whatever. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with adding realtors, but you'll get to a point where once you have 5,000 and you can't add anymore, you're gonna have to go back and delete people, so that way you can re-add people. So that's one free way to do it, because that doesn't cost anything to expose to that group. The other side is, of course, the business page, which I'm sure most of you have some type of business page set up. There isn't really a ton of value in the business page unless you're going to, now, it's good to have, don't get me wrong, right? And when I say that, you're not going to get like a ton of leads just by having a Facebook business page. But what you can do is you can boost posts. And that's where, you can create Facebook ads and boost posts. By the way, the boosting is kind of going out, and Facebook leads ads are the new thing. So if part of your social media plan was, to boost 5 posts this spring, and you set aside $50 for each of them, or $100 or whatever it is, I would advise you to do some research on Facebook lead ads and do those as opposed to Facebook boosting. All right, because boosting is not as effective as it used to be. Lead ads are the way to go now.
I want to piggyback on that if you
Please.
don't mind. So our agent leadership group is reading a book. Our book right now is How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age.
Oh, nice.
So it's Dale Carnegie, and it's adapted for today. It's phenomenal. It
That's
really
great.
gives you a lot of tips on how to keep it authentic and without being someone that goes and has an axe to grind and
Yeah.
gets ridiculous.
Yep.
So that one's good. Business page.
Hold on, can we repeat it?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
how to win friends and influence people in the digital age. Which,
Yep.
for those that don't know, that book's been out probably 40 years.
36, I think, or 29
Whatever.
or something.
80 years.
Yeah.
It's been out, it's something I read when I was selling furniture.
Yeah.
They made us, all the salespeople, got a copy of that book when we started at the company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now there's a version for the digital age. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What was the second thing?
And then the second thing is, as far as the business page you mentioned, the benefit of the business page is that it is the SEO, right? Because your business posts do get indexed with the search engine, and your personal doesn't. So
Yes.
there is a benefit to
Yep.
that. And then I was also going to say with KW, with the Facebook, with our KW Command and our lead accelerators, that's all built in. So, we won't go deep into
Yep.
that, but it's all in one place. You log into Command and it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to market for listings? You want to market for buyers? You want to increase your brand awareness?
Yep.
And you're doing it right in there. And you set the budget, super
Yep.
cool. So,
Yeah, which is obviously, that's all new stuff. So
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really cool. All right, what else? Questions on these 7? Anyone? Time time management, scheduling.
Jeff, you guys have been controlling your morning for the first quarter. You guys do a great job no matter what. We've been controlling our morning purposefully
Yeah.
here with the prospecting group in the training room. Anything that you've observed during that first quarter in controlling the morning? Is everybody adhering to it? Are you having
Yeah.
any struggles with it?
Well, basically, so to the question of controlling the morning, all right? Everyone has a different start time, so we don't actually say everyone starts at this time or else. We actually have our agents give us their start time, and we've posted it all around the office, so everyone has like a sign by their desk that says what their start time is, right? So that's the first point. Not everyone adheres to it, okay? Things come up, whatever. But the point is that when they do one-on-ones with me, in their one-on-ones, I'll say, okay, how you doing on the start time? You said your start time was, some of them are 7:30, some of them are 9:30, right? You said your start time was 9 a.m., how you doing on that? Oh, well, I'm hitting it about 4 days a week. Okay, 4 days a week, well then that goes back to our whole 20% rule. Okay, you're giving up on 20% of your week, you're giving up on 20% of your income if you're only hitting it 4. So it's kind of an awareness, right? So it's kind of the public putting it out there and watching our associates hold each other accountable is really the reason why we did it. We wanted kind of like public accountability. As far as the activities, obviously just showing up is half the battle, right? So then once you get there, I don't necessarily need a detailed half hour by half hour. The most successful agents and CEOs and everything related to time management do activities in 15-minute increments, right? They do meetings in 15-minute, any book you read on the best of the best, they do things in 15-minute increments. Meetings are 15 minutes, phone calls are no more than 15 minutes, activities are 15-minute blocks. Why is that? Well, because then you can pack 4 things into 1 hour that a lot of people will say, no, let's block an hour for that or a half hour for that, right? So doing things in 15-minute increments is the way to go in the morning whenever possible. Yep. Anything else on the 7 things that we talked about for this spring? Well, yes?
I was putting about the schedule about number 1, I would put how much do you attribute someone's schedule to what their success is going to be?
Gosh, I mean, for those in the front, the question is how do you attribute the schedule to the success? If there was one thing that you could master in this business, that takes the cake. Because everything else falls in. For instance, somebody says, well, wait a minute, I thought it was skills. I thought I had to have great skills. Okay, great, but you won't have great skills if you don't schedule time to practice and master the skills and actually show up and do it. So everything circles back to the schedule. So it's hands down the most important trait in my opinion. Good question. And really even more important is having the same arrival time every day, right? That helps everything else stay consistent, fall into place. It happens in every real estate office. Agents have up and down businesses. Good 1 month, bad the next month. Good 1 month, bad the next month. Good 2 months in a row, bad 2 months in a row. That's because they don't have consistent start times. If you have a consistent start time, then it alleviates that yo-yo roller coaster ride of closings and commissions and so forth. So having a consistent start time. I don't care even if it's 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Whatever time it is, you start every day at this time, and this is what you do at that time. Good question.
And we talked about that in the meeting, like it's important now when we go into quarter 2 and quarter 3 because it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of the season. And then you get to quarter, the end of quarter 3, quarter 4, and you're like, dang, I'm not really where I wanted to be. If you just stay consistent with that, own the morning, own your day, and you just live it, like that's what you live.
The best thing you can do is all of your income servicing activities take place in the afternoon. So when we say own the morning, we're not talking about, servicing clients and going to inspections and attending closings. The income servicing all happens in the afternoon. And the reason for that is because if you do the same thing every single morning, that's where the consistent income is going to come from. But if you make excuses because, oh no, I got a closing at 9, I can't do that today, or this is interfering with my schedule, well then guess what? You just sacrificed a commission check 90 days from now, every time you do that. So you might have multiple closings in the morning in a row, but at some point, 60, 90, 120 days from now, you're like, crap, that was a good month. What happened to this month? I got no business. It's because you let your foot off the gas and you let that control your morning. Pull in the morning, win the day. And yes?
As someone who traditionally in the past has not been very good with making a schedule, actually creating one now, a daily schedule, has
Yep.
helped a lot.
Yep.
Now, changing it for the second quarter, what would for you be a priority in changing? The things that you accomplished in the first quarter, or things that you feel like you failed in and need to change in the second quarter?
Yep, great question. So what would you change? What would you change going into the second quarter? I would look at two things. So number one, I would look at, it's kind of that question reminds me of the book Strength Finders 2.0, right? Strength Finders 2.0 is all about forget about your weakness and just focus on the strength. So if I had something that was really working well for me, I would probably double down on whatever that is, right? Whether it was an activity, whether it was just something in my schedule that was working really well. When I say double down, I would increase the amount of time I would spend in that activity. All right, and if I had something that wasn't working for me or I wasn't getting good results, instead of saying, you know what, I really got to do that this quarter, I would just eliminate it, right? So I would take a portion that's working and add time in that area, and I would eliminate the area that I'm not actually, I wrote it down, but I haven't done it once. Okay, just get it out of your schedule and let's put something else in there. All right, good question. All right, anything else, guys?
I have a
Yes.
question. It doesn't relate to this.
And yeah, it can relate to anything.
Are you planning on doing another Unreal Dialogue class?
The Unreal Dialogues class, yes. We are planning on doing one either late summer or early fall.
Okay.
Yep. So we do a course, it's called, and I'll just share this and if there's any other questions. Unreal Dialogues is NLP training. It's neuro-linguistic programming. It's basically taking your sales skills to the next level, right? If there was a college course on sales skills, it's like sales training 301. I mean, it is a pretty high level course. So yes, my goal is to essentially bring that back every other year or every 18 months. And it's been about a year or so since we've done it. So it'll be, and also we're trying to condense it. Instead of doing like a year long, we're trying to condense it to a 90-day series somehow. So we're working on that.
Okay.
So probably late summer, early fall.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, anything else, guys?
We're not gonna see you again as a